Welcome to the Life Well Led podcast, everybody. Today, I'm doing an interview with somebody I had met this year who's been a great colleague, a mentor in a way, and also a really good connector of people and a great example of leadership in not just the DFW area, but here in America. Today, I have Dr. Gerard Ibarra with me today. Sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing outstanding. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm doing well, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on to talk today. And as part of the Life Well Led podcast, it's not just about life, it's also about leadership and the mixture of both. So if we focus on that today, it would be first learning about you and your life as far as your journey in leadership.
So I guess where it all started, when I was in college, I did co-op research, and what it came down to is I worked at a engineering firm as an engineer, student engineer, that is. And then when I ended up graduating, I moved away from the engineering field and got more into management. So my first job out of college was UPS. And UPS was a really great organization in terms of getting me prepared for more of what I was doing. And there's a lot of things that I learned when I first started off. You're straight out of college. You did a little bit of work. And I went from a engineering atmosphere where I spoke with people who had patents, PhDs, well-known scientists in the community, to go into a operation where it's, okay, we got to get things done. We got to get them done now. So it's a big change for me. And that's where I started realizing that there are two different worlds there. You got your engineering world, and then you got the operation world. So I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but because of those mistakes, I was able to improve in what I did. So my career started with UPS. I was there for about 10, 11 years. I rotated multiple departments: the engineering department, marketing department, consulting department, and the operations department. And along those channels, those departments, that is, they each had a different way of communicating. So in the engineering department, you try to put one up on the other in terms of time measurement or work measurement. But in operations, it was all, we got to get this done. And the vernacular in operations was much more different than the other departments, because you were under a lot of, not so much stress, but you had to get the package delivered, and how you communicated to the individuals had a lot to do with how well they respected you, how well you were able to get them to do things. And the other departments, so there's the marketing department, which was a little bit laid back, and the consulting world. In the consulting world for UPS, they had an arm of consulting. You had to deal with a lot of customers, a lot of clients on a larger scale, and the way you said things, the way you presented yourself had a lot to do with things, or had a lot to do with how well they perceived you. But the one thing that I remember very vividly when I worked at UPS was I was assigned to an operation. And this operation was in Texas, and they were a very strong hold union center. So in Texas, we have multiple centers. We have centers in San Antonio, Belton, Temple, Palestine, what have you. And we had some that were up north of Texas, or North Texas. And I had to go there for Christmas. And I remember very vividly, the atmosphere there was so much more different. My first day, I was walking in there, and I saw this UPS driver coming down, and I said, "Hey, how's it going? Good morning." And then he looked at me and says, "Am I on the clock?" "No." He says, "Well, then you don't need to talk to me." And he walked off. But that was the way that's how they operated up there. And so I had to make a big shift on how I was going to be running the center. I didn't expect anything like that, but in the end, when I left, I got a round of applause from all the drivers, the lead driver, and he really thanked me for being there and really treating everybody the same. So that was a very big learning experience. It really opened up my eyes based on everything that I've learned in the past. So I finished up UPS, and then I went out and worked at a small company. I was the director of logistics and marketing. And that was, again, learning new things. I was talking to different people. They were on different pay scales. And it just continued evolving from there until finally I ended up at my second to last job. I was the CEO of Jaguar Logistics, and that was a trial in itself. I mean, I remember. So I was vying for the CEO position, and the board elected to bring someone else from the outside in. So, in something like that taking place, you worked very hard. You tried to do everything you can to get to that position and really try to help the company and move in the right direction. But no, it didn't come out that way. So I had two choices. I had to, well, actually three. I could say, well, thank you for your time. I'm going to leave. Or I could say, I'm just going to try to make this gentleman fail. Or the third one was, I'm going to really make his life very, very easy. And I chose the third one. And I was very humbled by that. I felt really good doing that. I felt really good being the number two man, trying to support the number one man. And I think in the end, he was, it took maybe about 1 month before he really started to begin to trust me, knowing that I'm not there to make his life miserable, because he knew what he was coming into. He knew how hard I was working for this position. But in the end, he really, really leaned on me for help. And I felt good about that. So, started with UPS, made all these mistakes as a supervisor, and just slowly but surely learned along the way. Of course, I did some reading and training, but not everything that you do in read or train is going to be preparing you for what's going on in the real life. So,
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing your journey. I mean, it sounds like while you had a very technical background to start and then working into logistics, a lot of that similarity comes into soft skills almost. Tell me about that. When you talk about the challenges that you faced at UPS, Jaguar Logistics, and even in your roles that have experienced throughout your career, what were the similarities in terms of those challenges that were the soft skills, or maybe better put, the human capital challenges?
yeah, the biggest thing, and it doesn't matter, whether you're in management or not, is understanding people, is trying to really understand where they're coming from, what is it that they expect from you, or what you expect from them. And that's just, no matter where I went, that was the one of the things that was very consistent. And it's called, I guess, your hot button, right? What is it that makes you tick? What is it that gets you motivated? What is it that gets you going? And it's how you're able to communicate that. So when it comes to trying to lead a team, you have to really realize who the team is and what makes each person tick. You talk about the culture of an organization. That too, you as a leader, you're going to be helping shape that culture. And if the culture is one of trust and love, for example, then you have to portray that, because if you don't, the team isn't going to respect you. And it all goes back to about how the people want to be treated and what the culture of the company is. The one thing that I remember very vividly, again, this is from my UPS days, that UPS did a lot of training. They did a lot of training, and it was really good. They had I remember when I was a supervisor, we all went to what's called a supervisor basic training school.
Mm-hmm.
So you first had a 1 week school to prepare you for the 3 week school. And the 1 week school was close by in your city. So mine was in Dallas. But the 3 week school, after the 1 week, it was a year later, you go up to a university and you spend 3 weeks there. And it was difficult. You had some very, very long nights. They gave you all kinds of work. They were trying to see what you were made of. And I remember when they would ask you to write something, they would make you write it out on paper. And when you would turn it in, if there was any mistake, like an erase, you didn't dot an I, they would just tear up the whole paper, so you got to do it all over again. So they were just trying to see what you were made of. So in that training, one of the things that I remember was you don't treat people the way you want to be treated. Treat people the way they want to be treated. So for me, I don't like to be told if I'm doing something wrong, where they sit you down, you have a cup of coffee, and then 15 minutes later, they try to tell you what's going on. For me, it's just tell me what's wrong, I'll fix it, and we'll move on. That's me. But other people need that 15-minute, let me tell you how good you are, and then, by the way, you can become better if you do this. That's not me. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. For most of my career, I was the second of those two, just because I was very self-conscious of myself and needed that reassurance. But amazingly, as the journey goes on, as you get older, you get more self-confident. You figure that out. But for you, it was just be clear and direct. And I love the idea of treat people the way you want to be treated, because it means you have to get to their level. That doesn't mean go down or go up, but treat them as an individual and
Yes.
get the best out of them. And just to encapsulate what you said even earlier was, what's their hot button? What makes them tick? What makes them drive? That also can be said to what sets them off the wrong way. So understanding people on an individual level, and not necessarily bringing a one-size-fits-all solution.
You hit the nail on the head. One of my managers at UPS, he told me, he says, Gerard, you just got to know what the hot button of each person is. Because once you know that, you can get them to do anything for you. And that's what you need to learn. What makes them tick, so that you can get them to do what we need as an organization to do. So I remember that very vividly.
It's a great lesson. And I learned that through, some experience, but also studying leadership. Somebody might phrase that as informal authority. So understanding that you may have the authority and your title and what you've been, granted as the person who authorizes, but being able to get informal authority is no different than politics in the civics lessons we learned as kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Have a constituency of people so you can get things done. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I was just about to say, you've been down this road. You've been reading all the right books and experiencing the right things. So, yes, exactly.
It's interesting. I think the trend in leadership now is becoming much more humanitarian. It's becoming much more soft skill oriented. And as things get more automated, it seems like that is going to continue to grow. Would you say that is true in your experience over time, that the soft skills are becoming more and more of a valued commodity in leadership?
I would have to say yes, because of everything that we've been through. I mean, when COVID came around and we were having to manage things from video, you miss those connections with the individuals, whether it was having a cup of coffee or just talking about the football game, just on passing, building that relationship. So, yeah, a lot of things have changed after that, and you have to become much better at what you do. How do you communicate via a Zoom or via a Teams meeting, what you need them to do? How do you learn more about the individual? I'm talking about those hot buttons. How do you know what their hot buttons are if you don't have that time to communicate them? With AI coming around, the thing that AI can do for you that's a positive is you could write an email where you're very upset with an individual or a client, and then you could take that email before you send it and then type it in the Copilot, say, Copilot, please take this and tone it down and make it sound good, so that you don't send something that gets people upset. So, AI is going to be playing a big role in that area. It's going to help you with your emotions, I guess, with your soft skill in the emotion side.
Talk to me about Keep It Safe. What's going on there as your business venture now?
So thank you for asking about that. It certainly has been a ride. Just to kind of give you a little history on this,
Please.
My wife's brother passed away unexpectedly. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and then he was given about 6 months to live. And about 5 weeks later, he was no longer here. And
sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And what my wife noticed was that his wife, my brother-in-law's wife, she was having a very hard time. Of course, there's the emotions of losing your love of your life. But he took care of all the payments. He took care of how to pay the bills, the electricity, the monitoring system, the cable, what have you. And she didn't know how to do any of that. And it took her a long time. It took her almost a year to get all the information she needed so that she could close out the right accounts and get into other accounts that she needed so that she could access some of the funds so that she could pay out some other things. And I remember my wife saying, with all this, I guess, these things that we're going through, our sister-in-law, she says, wouldn't it be great if there was a way of storing all this information so that when something happens, you have it all? And then for me, it was like, wow. I just started thinking about that and couldn't let it go. And after about 2 months of thinking about it really night and day, I said, I'm going to go ahead and do this. My wife didn't want me to do it. She wanted me to retire. She says, you're too old to be doing this. So I said, well, just this last one. But we ended up moving forward, and it's been 2 years, but we're moving forward in the right direction. We have our beta product out. And when I was talking about my wife here, people would say, why didn't I think about this before, or someone else? And my wife is very logical. If you know the character Star Trek, it's Spock from Star Trek.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good.
Spock.
She makes Spock look like a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum. That's how logical she is. So for her to come up with that, because I remember when my dad passed away back in 2009, we had a hard time getting a lot of information. And I remember having a very difficult argument with my mom. She was saying, okay, he was there during World War II. He has $15,000 coming to him. I says, I can't find it. I took probably a total of 8 hours searching, calling various organizations. I finally told her there's nothing like that. And she got upset. Well, don't worry, I'll find it. And a week later, she calls me, and guess what? I had to eat crow. She found it. And so I didn't think about it back then. And that's why I said she's very logical, because when things go wrong, my wife is very logical, says, well, how can we make this more efficient? How can we make this more right? So that's how it was born. It was through my wife's idea, and I just kept on moving forward with it. So
that's great. I mean, the story of, tragedy and despair to some extent, and the human experience of life and death drove part of that. So yeah, there's a logical part to it, but I'm also hearing throughout our conversation that the humanity part of you, the humanity of understanding people, was still driving to not just help in this situation it could have helped, but to help others so that they don't go through that situation again.
That's so true. You hit the nail on the head. I don't want other individuals to go through what I went through with my dad, what my sister-in-law went through with her husband. And even as recent as a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, my younger brother passed away, and we had a hard time getting some information. Just between myself, my wife, and my godson and niece, we spent maybe about 12 hours trying to get videos and pictures together. And with our product, you already have that, and you wouldn't have to spend 12 hours. You would have to spend maybe a minute or two. But it's the love there, but I want individuals to spend more time celebrating the person who passed away versus all the logistics, all the things that go behind, having a funeral and all the information that you need. So that's what we as a company would like to see, help those individuals celebrate the loved one's life.
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenge. It's a problem. It's a solution for, what we have out there that we may not have realized that we needed. And that's the beauty of the American market, right? Is being able to have the freedom to solve those challenges and solutions. And so I think that even though the logic part that you had mentioned really helped drive the idea, the humanity part really inspires and continues to be the collective purpose for doing it. So
yes.
I think that's a good leadership lesson in and of itself. If I'm talking to our audience here and realizing that when you have those tough times and you have an idea and you want to take it all the way to the end, that inspiring collective purpose is something to really stick through. And I want to pivot one more time, and I really appreciate you coming on here. But when we talk about humanity and talking about virtue and working for others, I know that in my introduction to you and knowing you for the short time that we have is that you're somebody who really does care about people, get to know them, and give back in a lot of ways. So this is giving back even through entrepreneurship, giving back in where we meet at Success North Dallas, where you're giving back by providing referrals, references, and connecting people. As a leader, what you built on this. How would you describe that to a new leader or a leader who may not have heard this before, as far as what you do to give back and how that is a big benefit to the organization or whatever it is that you serve?
So good question. For me, and this is me, I like giving back because I just feel good about giving back. I mean, I'm part of Knights of Columbus. That's something in itself, and I volunteer through them. But through the leadership side, I also try to connect people with people that I think would make sense. And I really take a lot of pride or joy in trying to connect that one person with someone else where they're extremely happy about it. And just last week, I connected this one lady from one of these major three consulting firms with someone else, another lady. And when I went to class, because I teach an entrepreneurship class,
It's getting that right
and
there.
thank you. And I give back in those terms. I tell all the students, look, do not do these things. This is where I failed. Don't do these things. If you want to fail, do what I'm telling you not to do. But if you want to succeed, do what I'm saying to do and not do what I did that failed. But she told me, the lady says, I really, really appreciate you giving me that introduction. It's just been wonderful. I can't believe it. We're going to have to do coffee here. I have to give you all the day. I mean, she was excited. She was extremely excited. So, and then I just recently, I have not a student from SMU. She got connected through me from a friend of mine where we went together to school at SMU. She said, hey, you need to meet this person. And so I'm trying to connect her with a few people. I've invited her over to Success North Dallas. So she'll probably be going in this April.
Excellent.
And she's very appreciative of all the context I'm giving her. And there was another student from the University of Dallas. I also teach there. And out of nowhere says, hey, Dr. Ibarra, I had you for a class. I was wondering if I could have a meeting with you. I'm like, sure, absolutely. I always tell my students that. I said, look, use me at your disposal. I've got a lot of information here. I've got a lot of scars. So if you want to know what not to do, reach out to me. And he did. And he was very, very appreciative. I mean, he couldn't thank me enough for the connections I've been giving him. Some of the things I told him what he could do when he's applying for a job, things that I would look for. So yeah, I try to give back in those things, and I never want anything in return. Never look for anything in return. My biggest return is, like I said, when they tell you, thank you so much. That was a great connection.
Absolutely. There's nothing better in the world than helping people in whatever capacity that you have. And, I almost wanted to ask you, like, what would be, and yeah, I will. And because I appreciate what you've done for me already. And I know that our relationship is short, but it's inspired me along with others at Success North Dallas that have this servant's mentality when it comes to connecting people. And even though my network wasn't very large when I started, I have the ability to do the same thing as my network grows and still able to do it today, and we'll be able to do it tomorrow. So it's a great lesson to learn for young leaders and young professionals to give early and give often. Even when you don't have what everybody else may have, it will grow and you'll be able to pay those dividends and pay it forward down the road. The only thing I'd leave off with is if you had any advice for any young leaders or young professionals out there as they grow their careers, what would the one piece of advice be from Gerard that either it's a mistake not to make or something that you've done that was successful?
So for me, the biggest thing I would suggest for these new leaders, and even leaders who have been around, is try to not get your emotions involved or get the best of you. And it's very hard to do. Marcus Aurelius, a great philosopher and leader of the Roman Empire, it took him, I think, over 35 years to practice that skill. But because he was able to leave his emotions out, he made some of the most effective decisions when it came to running the army and leading Rome. And it's because he didn't let people affect his emotions where they might say something and it gets them to think otherwise. He just says, let's stay with the facts. So that's why I was kidding earlier about the AI. You can send an email, someone really irked you. That's a nice word, irked you.
Yeah.
And you just shoot off that email. Well, before you shoot it off, why don't you run it through AI or wait 24 hours and then do that? Or even having a conversation. But that would be the biggest thing. I would say, focus on your emotions and just try not to let them get the best of you.
That's great advice. And, I'm glad that you say that because it's part of a good coach or consultant in that matter, or both, is able to understand that when you are talking to leaders, making those decisions reactively is more often than not going to work out. Being proactive about how you want to show up with whatever emotion you have, whether it be anger, sadness, to say, what do I want to show up with? Confidence. Of course you do. You want to show up in a certain way that elicits the best out of the people around you. So I think that
Exactly.
you're absolutely on the same page as what I'm thinking as well. And ultimately, that's a great piece of advice to pass on. Before we close out today, what would be a good place for people to check out your startup and company for Keep It Saved?
Yeah, well, they could go to our website is keepitsaveded.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn with the same name, Keep It Saved. And for myself, my LinkedIn page, they can find me under Dr. Gerard Ibarra and learn a little bit more about what I do and don't do. So
Dr. Gerard, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was an
thank you.
absolute pleasure,
It was
and
my pleasure.
it was a lot of fun as well. We will
Thank you.
sign off from here, and audience, take care, and we'll see you next time.